Specimen, 16 Psyche, was probably the most grounding piece for me. I think space can sometimes feel so abstract that it feels disconnected from us. So I wanted to take something as distant as an asteroid and literally bring it into human scale. This piece was very different for me. Um, I've never worked in a medium like this. I used materials like foil, steel wool, and other found objects in a really intentional way. These are things that people recognize, things people can touch. It turns Psyche from something you can observe into something you can relate to physically. There's also something important to me about reconstruction, taking scientific predictions and translating them into something imperfect, handmade. It acknowledges that our understanding of space is always partial. We're always building approximations. And in that way, the piece became less about accuracy and more about connection. I've never done an abstract piece like this before, especially something that is so physical. I have always been a very careful planner, and you can see that in my other projects as well. Um, from the sketch to the first iteration to the second iteration to sub iterations to planning out the digital space to carefully choosing the colors. So something that focuses purely on the physical force of pushing objects together in some way that to some might look like trash. Um, and I say that lightly, um, because it is not trash. It is not meant to look like trash, but it is messy. And that's part of the beauty of it. Um, it's it was very different and it was so integral to this experience, I think. That piece, I didn't have a full plan for it. I didn't have a full vision for it. With a lot of my works, I have to carefully construct what the end result might look like in my mind. For this piece, I had to trust the process, and that can be difficult, especially when you don't know what the process is going to result in, when you don't have a clear picture of what it's going to look like. So I sat on my floor for 4 weeks straight. Well, not 4 weeks straight, but 4 weeks on and off, pushing pieces together, tearing tin foil, cutting steel wool, even cutting my hands, not intentionally, but it was a physical piece. Um, I got a toolkit so that I could further work on this piece. So I went from using my tiny little um, emergency um, scissors to using wire cutters to using professional grade everything. Um, so this piece developed not only in an abstract way with the materials, but in the way I worked on it and the way that I developed it. Um, and that was very interesting to me as well. I didn't know what was going to come out of this piece. And that was the beauty in it. Because Psyche the asteroid is this ancient core, and we don't know what its journey was. But we do have an idea of what similar journeys have looked like. And that was what was core to this piece. I wanted to bring Psyche, something that is so distant, something that is so ancient and just otherworldly and so impossible to the common person and even the scientists working on it, to a tangible human scale lens with accessible materials. Um, in fact, it's a funny story. These materials that are meant to be so accessible and affordable were actually very difficult to procure. I had to go to various craft stores. I had to go to various hardware stores. And the cardboard was actually the hardest piece to get because I had a very specific vision in mind for the cardboard. And I had a hard time getting that. But I set myself back and realized it doesn't need to be like that. The the process of this is that it formed despite everything going on, and it's still accessible despite everything going on. So I let that be part of the process as well. Um, and it turned into something beautiful. It turned into something that is hard to picture, but when you look at it, when you look at all the layers, you can really see the depth and structure that went into it because it's not just a random piece. It it might look random. It might look like the pieces of it were just constructed and thrown on, but everything was carefully placed, even in its insanity, even in how it's constructed. And I think that's what's beautiful about it. Um, it is a hard piece. It is just a mash of everything coming together in a way that wasn't planned, and much like asteroids are, because this piece is probably one of my favorite pieces. So thank you for observing that piece and taking in everything that everything that exists about it. Um, there's so much to it, but also there's so much that we still don't understand.